Come and Katie. Come and Midna. Come and Biddy. Come on.
Living my bucolic life, the ugly city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and sew and spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.
Hello, and welcome to our next part of making cardigan jacket. So what we're going to be doing right now is just basic construction. Shouldn't be too detailed at this point. We're going to sew the side seam in the back, sew the underarm piece to it, and then connect it at the shoulder with the front piece that we already have done. Get all of that out of the way, and then if it looks like time allows, going to start working on forming trim around the template that they gave us. So let's get started. So this is my back piece, and I have made some modifications that I've already told you about, but in case you're new, I took in the shoulder as the latest one. The darts down here I've omitted by tapering the sides a little bit, so I don't have to worry about those darts. And it's just a basic back at this point. So I need to make sure I marked this one here because that's for sleeve placement and my notches. And I am just going to fold this right like this. And of course, remembering that I have already fused a very, very lightweight interfacing to all of these pieces because this wants to come apart in so many ways on its own that that's the way I can kind of somewhat keep it under control. So I'm just pinning this in a couple spots, and I'm going to sew it right along here at 5/8 of an inch. I will be pressing this very carefully, but first I'm going to go ahead and sew my little side underarm pieces on just so I can do all my pressing at once. And you know, these are very easy. There's notches to line up. Just right there, again, 5/8 of an inch straight down. All right, so I've got these sewn, and just like before, what I'm going to do is first sew it flat the way it was stitched. And I do have a steam iron. And actually, while I have the iron here, I might just press a few other spots. Okay, so now that is pressed there, it's nice and warm and soft and malleable, and the seam is set in. Now I can open it up, guide it open, and press it down. And while it's hot and steamy, I'm going to get my clapper block and just press it straight down on there. This does not have any wood finish on it, and so it'll absorb the moisture, cool it down while it's flattening it out, and it's going to make it want to retain that shape a lot better. So with that done, I am going to hit it one more time on the right side. But whereas I don't really want to push super hard with my iron onto this fabric, I can get it hot and steamy and then take the iron away and then push hard with my clapper block. And with the pressure of that, it takes care of it. So now I have a very flat, nicely pressed seam. So I'm going to do that same method with the other seams also. All right, so I have all of my seams pressed open, but before I put the front to the back, I'm going to actually put a row of fusible stay tape around the neck lines just to make sure that they're going to hold their shape while we're working on everything else. So the stay tape I am going to use is this one. I think it's good for necklines because of the bias cut on it. It flexes very well. I don't have a name for it. I bought it on 𝐷𝐸, that website. I know nothing about them, but I know the stuff works and they shipped it well. So when I fuse it on, I fuse it so that the little stitched band, you can see it's like a bias cut, but then it has a little tape on top of that. Kind of like a twill tape would be a very sturdy one. It's got a little tape kind of like that that's stitched onto it. So I'm putting the side that has the tape on it towards where the seam is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and fuse this on both fronts and around the neckline up here. While I'm over here, you know, shoring things up, I don't like the way that the top of this stay here was pulling down. Because I had this up here very reinforced and then this down here, I removed the interfacing. And there's something about this, the way that these catch stitches were catching it, I just didn't feel comfortable with. So I'm going to go ahead and actually put a piece of my fusible tricot tape, very soft, over that. It's just going to be a little extra oomph to keep it stable. You know, this is the only time that I can make these kind of choices on this jacket, so that's what I am doing here. And I try to kind of round up the jacket here because there's a curve for that chest, so I don't want to make it totally flat while I'm pressing it. So that's why I have it braced up here against my block. And I think that that's going to help make sure that there is no chance that any of those catch stitches are going to feel the weight of all of this down here. So it probably wasn't necessary, but I wanted to do it anyway. And this is the stay stitch, or the stay tape, that I fused along the top. Okay, so now it's time to go ahead and pin the front to the back. And the front shoulder is narrower than the back. There's some fullness that we ease in that back. So I'm just going to match up my outside edges, and as I sew, I'm just going to work it in. With my feed dogs, I hope. This is very thick fabric. I've got multiple layers going here. If that doesn't work, I think that, well, I think it will. I can already see that I can just kind of form it in. So even though I have probably about 3/8 of an inch to ease in, just sitting here and pressing on it, it wants to make itself fit. So that's not going to be a problem. All right, so while I have this here and I can open it up flat, I just wanted to try out my template piece to see what the trim will look like. So actually I'm going to stick some pins in here, but I just wanted to see how this would all work out. So these little triangles match up with the shoulder seams right here, center back matching up with my center back seam, and I'm staggering it in about 1 inch. Okay, this back right here, it cuts from the shoulder, it cuts straight over. And it seems like when I did my mock-up, it looked like it would be more comfortable if it actually rounded out just a little bit. So I'm thinking that I might do that, round it out so that it's not so high up onto the back of the neck right there. But that's just like maybe 1/4 inch. So yeah, I think that this will fit, so I can go ahead and use this as a template to make my trim. Now what I need to know is how long to make it this way. I'm just going to make a note that I need to make the front trim 14 inches long, and then make it follow this path here. So that's going to give me something to do tonight, sit there and braid up my trim, and this is what it's going to look like. It's literally a braid where I have a little gold lame piping, a little white with a twisty type edge piping, and then threads that I've pulled out of the fabric and just braided those together. So I can be working on this, but I'm going to set that aside for just a moment. I just wanted to try it out on there. Put that up here. And I'm going to go ahead and sew these side seams together. So just like everything else, I'm just going to match these up, sew them at 5/8, press it flat, press it open, use the clapper, and I'll be right back. All right, so this is what it looks like so far. I've just pinned it on her, but it's a cute little shape. Let me pull her out so we can see the back. And this is the back. No shoulder pads have been placed in there or anything, but you can see it looks fine. I am going to go ahead and actually get started piecing the sleeves together. All right, so we have a 3-piece sleeve here. Try to make it all fit. And so I'm just going to go ahead and mark my notches on here. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew the 3 pieces together flat. We're not actually going to make a tube sleeve yet because there's a whole lot of stuff. Once I get the sleeve together nice and flat, I'm actually going to skip ahead and start on lining, because I'm going to need to get that oriented down here where all of this stuff is before I connect the sleeve to the jacket in the Marie method of cardigan jacket construction. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just start marking where all of my notches and everything are so I can get it all matched up. Okay, so I've got my front sleeve sewn onto my underarm part, and you can see how because they have you cut these on different grains, and because this is more on a bias, it's going to have a lot more give and everything. And I just wanted to point one thing out. I have fused a lightweight interfacing to all of my pieces, and it's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. Traditionally, this underarm piece is not interfaced traditionally, you know. There's always exceptions to the rule, but I think that's because you want something that's not going to be pokey under your arm in case you're using a much heavier one. But I don't see a problem with it because the interfacing I'm using is so lightweight, it's not really going to change. It doesn't change the softness of it, it just keeps it from wanting to fall apart. So with that said, I had to press this a whole lot, and I realized that I erased all of my other little dots and everything, so I'm not going to worry too much about marking everything on this piece because I'm just going to erase it anyway when I iron it. But I'm going to go ahead, and what I do is I sew it at 5/8, press it flat, and I use my seam roll to press these on, and that way my sleeve can drape over the edges, and I'm not like trying to get something that has a really nice curve to it. I'm not going to unintentionally stretch that out of shape or make it flat. So anyhow, let me go ahead and do this last part of the sleeve, and we'll see what it looks like. All right, so this is what my sleeve looks like right now, and I am just going to carefully set this aside for a bit. And off camera, because you don't need to see it, I am going to cut out my lining. And this is my lining. Well, it's a piece of it. It's a Bember rayon, very breathable, very soft, very cool. Love it. I am going to be cutting basically all the pieces we just used. I'm going to be cutting out all 3 sleeve pieces, the bodice part front, the bodice part underarm. Instead of the side that we did that was eased, I'm going to be cutting out this one, this side front that has a dart. And I will be putting the dart into the lining. The only other change I'm going to make is when I cut out my back, my lining back, I'm going to be extending my seam allowance an extra inch. And that is because I am going to be putting in my lining probably different than you've ever put in a lining, which is put on one side, put on the other side, and then sew it together up the back. And that just seems to work better for me when I'm dealing with a lot of wrist type of things that I don't want to mess up. So that's how I'm going to get that cut out. Also, off camera, I am going to be braiding all of my trim pieces. And this is them. Okay, so what I'm going to need to do is make up a piece of my braid that is 17 inches tall, you know, twice, and that circle that the template was. And so I have all of these pieces. I have a scrap of fabric that I can take apart to get threads off of, and I'm going to be working on that too. So next time we'll work on lining and placing our trim. See you then. Bye-bye.